What do you hear in the lonely howl of the wolf? Does it send a cold shiver down your spine or raise your spirits as only the call of the wild can? Myth, fable, and blatant lies plague the wolf like no other species. No more controversial animal lives. None is so hated. None so misunderstood. In the wilderness or in our living rooms, the howl of the wolf speaks to us in many ways. Yet rarely do we listen. Deep in the Canadian heartland, a modern-day drama between two of the world's greatest predators is taking place on a stage of unrivaled natural beauty. Algonquin Park is one of the largest and oldest wilderness parks in North America. Located in a transition zone between northern coniferous and southern hardwood forests, a startling diversity of over 1,000 plants, 270 birds, and 40 mammals has evolved here. Observing wolves in the wild is a rare experience. Highly social, superbly intelligent, and extremely cautious, they are seldom seen, but often heard. Michael Runtz was 3 years old when he first visited Algonquin Park. 40 years later, his childhood fascination has become a lifelong passion.
Wolves are sort of one of the target species that I was really after when I started work here in 1972. And the very first time I met a wolf was by its voice, as is the standard way to meet wolves here in Algonquin Park. And it was a nice dark night. We were tracking wolves, trying to locate wolves by foot. We walked up this wonderful Portash trail into the dark night, and there it was, a howling from the distant lakeshore. That experience was really moving, hearing the first wild wolf of my life. And that was to be repeated many times in the years to come. Over those years, I've been supposedly working, but really just enjoying myself. This park is a phenomenal park. It's one of these places that is unique for its feel.
Algonquin Park has no towering mountains or deep whitewater canyons. Its appeal lies in a simple, accessible bond between people and nature. For many, it's the site of their first canoe trip, their first sighting of a moose or deer, their first symphony of wolf howls by starlight. But the park is wild, complex, and fragile, a place that takes a lifetime to know intimately. To most park visitors, the true face of nature remains invisible behind an indomitable wall of wilderness. It's just there, naturally. But not to Jhon and Mary Theberge. They too have spent a lifetime in the park, learning the lexicon of its most indomitable animal.
My relationship with Algonquin wolves began by chance when I was assigned to a wolf biologist named Douglas Pimlott, who worked for the then Ontario Department of Lands and Forests when I was in grade 13. We knew nothing about ecology of wolves. We were starting at sort of square one. He wasn't keen on getting into radio telemetry, which we've used extensively and found out a lot about wolves from. The technology was young then and uncertain, so we used howling to try to find wolves, and I canoed the park twice over at night. It's only in recent years I've seen a lot of these lakes, howling at them, conducting census work.
Our first experience was just shortly after we were married. And Jhon suggested that we come for a canoe trip up to Algonquin Park, and I naively said, well, do we have a tent? He said, no. I said, well, where will we sleep? Well, under the canoe will be fine if it rains. So as it happened, it did rain during the night, and the sleeping bag was completely wet. Fog came in and just blanketed the whole area. In the morning when we got up, we couldn't see anything, but we did give a howl and had a response from some wolves and decided to paddle out to where the response came from. And gradually the fog did lift. And lo and behold, just above us on the rock, 3 wolves appeared. Well, I guess I could have had my walking papers at that point and left the marriage, but I didn't. It was the most exhilarating experience I had. It was my introduction to wolves. And 37 years later, I'm still here in the game. People see the wolf as a thing of beauty, and they have a reverence for it. To them, it is a part of a wilderness that's dying and no longer is to be found everywhere in this country. And for them, this song of the wilderness, the song of the wolf, has a lot of meaning.
Established in 1893, Algonquin Park is renowned for its lush wilderness and diverse wildlife. The lord of this jungle is the wolf, North America's premier land predator. The wolf is considered a keystone species, maintaining the wild, natural balance by regulating the populations of all other species.
There it is, very faint. Go to the bend in the road there and maybe try with the antenna.
Jhon and Mary Theberge have spent the last 14 years studying Algonquin's wolf population.
There you go.
Although they rarely see one, they know more about the wolves here than anyone else in the world. By tracking radio-collared animals, they can analyze movement patterns and ultimately wolf behavior, most of it hidden behind the facade of thick forests.
Do you have a bearing on it?
Yeah, just a minute. It's faint, so it's not going to be a great bearing, but 275.
You're getting some movement then, because it was louder when we first got here.
Well, maybe, but the signal's pretty steady. It's almost up the road, because the road curves.
To study wolves, a good place to start is at the beginning, the den site.
It looks like the jackpine pack's been using this area again this year. Okay, it looks like it's been used. You can see the claw marks on the side. See these claw marks over here? These are new from last year.
That whole area is new. That's dug
Yeah.
back in there. Have you got a flashlight?
I do.
And there's more claw marks.
Oh, look at the way that's all crumbly, that.
You see on the right-hand side, there's two sort of dents in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
They could be pup tracks too, real soft ground.
Something has used it because usually there's a lot more debris and cobwebs that hang down, and that's all being cleared off.
Well, it's a really good den site, good one to use again. Sandy soil, easy digging. It's high on a south-facing slope.
Actually, when you look at the trails, they're like a spoke coming in on a wheel. They're definitely coming into a central place, and they're more used than they were last year.
The Theberges have a close relationship with their wolves and have given each pack a name. This den used to belong to the Hardwood pack, which was killed after it strayed outside the park. The Jack Pine pack quickly moved in, extending its own territory in a very unnatural way.
The bottom line with the Hardwood pack is it paid the price of having half its territory in the park and some outside the park, like so many packs have. It went outside the park and was killed, so we lost a whole pack. In a social animal like this, the experience of a female in raising young is important in its success. So in the Algonquin population, females get 1, maybe 2 chances at being breeding females, and then they're dead.
After a decade of research, the Theberges concluded that Algonquin's wolf population was plummeting to dangerously low levels due to merciless hunting outside the park. Their conclusions created a controversy over the protection of wolves, but it was only the beginning. In 1998, after several more years of genetic analysis, they made an amazing discovery.
One of the really big surprises in our research, which we thought was a study of the gray wolf, is that that's not the wolf that's here at all. To everybody's surprise, the genetics results discovered that we really have been studying the red wolf, not the gray wolf. There's 2 species of wolves in the world, both live in North America, the red wolf and the gray wolf. The red wolf was thought to live only, well, it lived only in eastern North America, supposedly from about the southeast, from Virginia south to Florida. Gray wolves inhabited the rest of North America. But red wolves became extinct in the wild in about 1965 or 1970. There's only one wild red wolf population that was reintroduced at great expense by the U.S. government in North Carolina, some captive stock. So this looks like a species about to go out of existence, and to everybody's surprise, we suddenly find another population of it, and it's here in Algonquin Park.
The Theberges' discovery of a rare wolf species, not even supposed to exist in Canada, was viewed with suspicion due to their controversial opinions about the declining wolf numbers in the park. Even Michael Runtz wasn't convinced at first.
In the early years, we always wondered why the animals here were so small and more brightly colored. I've seen wolves in northern Ontario, and they're quite a bit different looking. They're bigger and more gray. And finally, when I began to really analyze what was being written about the red wolf situation and the DNA results, then I finally came to the conclusion that they're right, that these are red wolves.
Almost overnight, Algonquin Park had become a fortress for one of the world's rarest animals. But could even a park protect it?
There's not many ways to get around the park apart from on foot or by canoe. But that's the beauty of the park. It's got this great network of lakes and rivers and streams, and you can paddle almost anywhere. Now, of course, there are some carry points, some portages to deal with, but they aren't that bad. And actually, it's kind of fun carrying an 80-pound canoe in your camera gear over a 2-kilometer portage. It's good for you.
Algonquin Park is laced with 1,600 kilometers of canoe routes, and Michael Runtz has probably traveled on every one as a leading park naturalist and photographer. Wherever there's a beaver pond, it's a good bet you'll find wolves prowling for a snack. Of all animals other than the wolf, the beaver has the most powerful impact on this ecosystem. Throughout Algonquin, there are thousands of beaver ponds, which create habitats for a lot of other animals. The ponds, for example, support water plants which are high in sodium and a favorite food of the moose. But with so many beavers around, without the wolf to regulate their population, Algonquin Park could become one gigantic beaver pond. And with the decline in the park's deer population, the beaver has become a major new food source for the declining wolf population. To study one of nature's most elusive animals, wolf scat has become an important research tool for Jhon and Mary Theberge.
There's 2 scats here.
Scat is another form of communication. To scientists, it tells a tale of current or changing eating habits. To wolves, animals who live in a world mapped out by scent, it marks their territory.
Yeah.
That one?
But this one's older than the other one, and there's quite a bit of coarse hair in there. Could be the deer or moose.
Yeah, I don't see any beaver in it.
The other one looked like it could have some beaver when it was, but this one seems far coarser than a beaver hair would be.
Yeah.
Well, there are no tracks on the road either, so.
Okay.
We collect about 1,000 scats a year, and from that we can analyze what the wolves are eating. Their diet consists of approximately 1/3 beaver, 1/3 moose, 1/3 deer. This has been different from the 1960s, where the diet was primarily 80% deer.
Wolves defecate not just for the normal purposes, but they also mark their territories with the scats. That's why we left part of the scat there, because if we didn't, we would take away this territorial marking. Other wolves come along and realize the territory's occupied.
That olfactory sac is 14 times larger than ours, and some behaviorists have estimated that their sense of smell then is developed 100 times more than ours. So that offers a whole spectrum to them that we don't have. It can read a whole story into the scent path of various animals.
The optimum prey is deer. Deer sort of jerk the wolves around the most. When the deer migrate, the wolves won't migrate with them. It's the energy package about maximum, optimum for them in terms of energy expended versus energy gained back, whereas beaver are only eaten in large numbers when deer are at low numbers, unavailable, because they spend a lot of energy and only get a small amount back. Whereas moose are more formidable prey, and they probably will hunt and maybe chase and surround and test a lot more moose before they'll get one successfully than they do a deer.
Algonquin wolves do eat more beaver than most other wolves, but deer remains their primary food source. Hunting in packs, they prey on older or weaker animals, which are easier to hunt down. And when they do, their legacy as the world's most ruthless land predator is easy to understand. This young deer was torn apart in only a few hours. By the time the pack moved on, only bits of fur and fragments of bone remained. Nothing was wasted.
Got some really fresh wolf droppings over here. Probably no more than a day old at most. If that, it still looks wet actually where they urinated too around them. So there is a wolf not too far away. Maybe up here somewhere.
The highly organized social structure of the wolf pack is key to hunting the largest of all the prey animals. Weighing in at over half a ton, it takes the combined energy of the entire pack to bring down a moose. In autumn, moose leave the sanctuary of wetlands behind to begin the annual rut. Exposed on dry land and hampered by thick underbrush, they become easier prey.
It's early October now. There's a beautiful frost on the plants this morning. Nice mist over the water. There has been a pack of wolves around for a couple of days back in a valley somewhere over there. This time of year, they still do use rendezvous sites, but they also travel to kills more regularly too with the pups. And by the sounds of the raven squawking over there, there has to be a kill. This is why that pack of wolves was around here. There's not much left. In fact, they're chewing on the bones for the marrow content. There's all kinds of signs around here of a great struggle, broken off branches and a fairly large sapling smashed right down. Wolves don't kill and then waste their food and go off and kill something else. When they kill an animal like a moose, they stay and they feast on it for days. And this animal here fed not only wolves, but ravens and perhaps fisher, marten, even a fox. A lot of things benefit from a wolf-killed animal.
No one else in the world has collected as much comprehensive wolf research as Jhon and Mary Theberge. Their most important tool is the radio collar. But before they can track this elusive predator, who can see, hear, and smell much better than humans, they have to catch them.
We have to approach the animal very quietly and very cautiously, not for fear for ourselves, but because we don't want the animal disturbed. We don't want the animal to be too frightened. We don't want this. It's a harrowing experience for it, being trapped, being caught, and having humans approach, because most humans kill them when they're in this situation. Now, we could go up to it with a syringe and sedate it, but again, we find that the animal is so frightened of us that it develops a lot of anxiety behavior and begins jumping and trying to get away. So Jhon will try to divert it and I will approach it with a poke stick that's about 6 feet long, and it doesn't even notice this poke stick, and I close the syringe and inject it with the drug.
We trap these animals, we do them with humane traps that are made for research with offset jaws and padded jaws and all the rest of it, and take all sorts of care not to damage these animals. When you catch them and you have at your feet an animal when they're in a trap, they're totally afraid. They're never aggressive. They're totally afraid. And there you have this animal laying, that your vision of wilderness, the animal you respect, and you've reduced it to the lying in front of you, drugged out. It's very emotional, very difficult. It's not been a pleasant part of the research for us, but it's been a necessity.
At that point, the next thing we do is put on the collar. We make sure the collar's working, we note the frequency, and we attach the collar to it, making sure that we have enough room that the animal, if it's swallowing a whole chunk of meat, isn't going to be choked by the meat, so there's enough room for the meat to slide down. But at the same time, the collar can't be so loose that it's going to be able to bring it up over its head. We measure the animal, and we look for any injuries, we look for disease, we look for mange. The animal's 282. And then finally we weigh the wolf before we let it go, and after that we can track it both from the ground and from the air.
We've radio collared 173 wolves, and there's only one other study in the world that's radio collared that many wolves. Radio collaring is absolutely essential to know where they are in the forest, because you just can't find them and track them any other way.
Everything that you see in this park is an interconnected web. Each species adds a harmonious part to another species. It's like working with a watch. If you were to take a watch and take various parts out and then gradually put it back together, that watch wouldn't work in the same way. And to us, this wilderness is like that. If you were to take one aspect out of it, the whole park wouldn't have the same feeling. It would still be there, would function, but you wouldn't feel the same way about it.
Often the wolves may be traveling a couple of kilometers away, and we may think of them as single wolves out there, but they're actually in touch with each other. They know where each other are. Their trails may braid back and forth now and again. They're really hunting as one unit. And then vocal communication is something that has really intrigued us over the years. Each individual wolf has its own signature in it in terms of the harmonic overtones. So wolves have differences, just like you could identify two different singing humans singing the same song. You know the different person, you identify them on the basis of their harmonic overtones. Wolves have their own harmonic overtones. But most interesting is we discovered that the wolf's ear, its ability to differentiate these overtones, is much more sensitive than the human ear. So they know when they hear a howl, whether it's a member of their own pack or whether it's some other wolf from another pack.
We have found that when two wolves have been giving the same resonant deep howls but haven't been together and eventually do come together, if one is a subordinate animal, it'll change the howl that's it's eliciting to a far more treble, timorous howl and not have the resonant tones in it. We found that when a wolf is killed, that the other animals grieve for it. We call this a mourn howl. it definitely descends in scale and has a very, very definitive sound of its own.
It's always fresh and always exciting to hear that voice of the wilderness. We still want to turn off our science thinking sometimes and just sit there quietly and watch the moonlight across the water and just listen to it.
It is the wolf that makes Algonquin Park wild. It reminds us of our own roots as the greatest predator of the wilderness. Nature's harshest rules are rarely seen by visitors to the park. Neither are the unforgiving laws of the men who made it. Until 1958, wolves inside its boundaries were hunted almost to extinction by the park's own wardens. Even here, the perception of raw, untamed nature is not the reality. The park itself was created by lumber barons, and for over a century, logging within its boundaries has never stopped. Hunting is also allowed in about 40% of the park's territory, although the wolf is not one of the hunted. But outside the park, wolves are still killed indiscriminately. As they track prey animals into the surrounding farmlands, old attitudes still prevail. The only good wolf is a dead wolf, even if it's a red wolf, one of the rarest animals on Earth.
In this population, one of the most important discoveries of the research is that the main cause of death is humans. Close to 70% are caused by humans. And this is a park where they're supposed to be protected.
Oh, there, that's a really good signal.
More than half this population, which is about 150 wolves in late winter, spend some time outside the park. Outside the park, there are no game laws whatsoever to prevent their killing. People can kill them in any amount, in any time, anywhere, and not even report the kill.
Are you getting it to the left or to the right of the water?
Straight towards it. There are people that are killing wolves out there just because they hate them. The fur isn't worth anything. They just leave the carcasses in the bush and feel they've done a social service by getting rid of a wolf.
Towards the water or away from the water? When the European colonizers first came to North America, they came from Europe with the attitude that wolves were evil. They were the manifest evil. And so they tried to eliminate them because they were their competitor. Oh, it's a small animal.
It hasn't decomposed. Surprising considering the warmth.
Look at the tail.
It's got mange.
Basically, Ontario has the laxest laws for protecting wolves anywhere in North America or in the world apart from Russia. As far as killing wolves, you don't need to have anything but a small game license. A landowner can kill them in any amount at any time of year without any bag limit. And the same goes for a person with a small game license. You have to have a license for killing a bear, you have to have a license for killing a moose, a deer, even a raccoon. Can we not give the wolf the same amount of respect as we are for the rest of the animals within this system?
Why is it that we love to hate the wolf, and at the same time we're drawn by its lonely howl? Every year in late August, hundreds of people travel to the park for a late-night wolf howl. It's a sign that attitudes may be changing.
If wolves don't answer back, it does not mean that wolves are not here. It means they could be here and they're choosing not to answer back, or they have been here today, they're off hunting, and may come back later on this evening. No matter if the howl is held on the side of a busy highway or if it's held on a very quiet back road in the park, it doesn't matter. It's the sound of the animal that really ties the people to the wilderness that the park really supports. It's a mythical animal. It's an animal that people still fear and misunderstand. So to have a chance of going somewhere and actually hearing a wolf howl, that is a really big thrill for most people. Twice on howls right here, we had a wolf come out. We actually heard it walking in the woods beside us, and it came up between the cars as we were leaving. Twice we saw a wolf from this very site. Outside the park, there still remains a fairly strong anti-wolf sentiment. And that certainly, I think, has been softened over the last few decades by the park's public wolf howl program. Not only is it educating people, but it's showing local people that the wolves are a major draw, and that means an economic gain for them if they are smart about it.
If you consider the wolf as a beautiful animal, it's a distillate of wilderness. It lifts your spirits. You have an empathy with that animal. Also, it is a reflection on how comfortable we are with the wilderness. If you're comfortable of being out there in the darkness and you hear that sound, to you it's almost a communion with nature. If you're not comfortable with being in the wilderness, if you're frightened of the dark, if you're frightened of what's out there, then that is a harrowing sound, it's a harrowing experience.
Spring is a time of rebirth in the wilderness. As the snow melts, animals awaken from their long winter's night to feast once again on the bounty of a new day. As winter gives way to spring, the residue of nature's most unforgiving season is revealed. A young wolf, too small and weak to survive the harsh cold, like many of the myths about Algonquin Park, is not what it appears to be.
No, it doesn't have any broken ribs. It doesn't have any broken legs, and basically no skeletal injuries on this side.
Now it looks fairly intact. The head is all intact, the head area here.
It's got lots of flesh on its shoulders. I don't think it's starved.
Look at that nose. Now that is not a wolf nose. That's a coyote nose. And these animals are losing a lot of their genetic integrity. This animal is far more coyote-like than wolf-like.
And yet it's an Algonquin Park wolf, even though it's died out in the farmland, and it's the future of the Algonquin Park wolf population. It's hard to think of this being an efficient predator on moose. It's just too small. In the years of our study, in just 14 years, the percent of females less than 50 pounds is statistically greater, so the animals are getting smaller. Skull sizes are shrinking as well. And genetically, the geneticists tell us of the genetic evidence that there's an increase in, using a genetics term, coyote-type haplotypes in the population rather than wolf-type. That's increased 30% since 1960, so that's pretty frightening. So what we're seeing here is the genetic erosion of the Algonquin wolf.
That tail's a little frozen. Rigidity.
Just get the hips in, I can't hold it much longer.
Okay.
So he's spent a short life we've known him, crossing an awful lot of roads and around a fair amount of settlement, which is more coyote-like than wolf-like.
Well, he's come a fair ways from Mud Turtle Lake.
A third of the population dies every year. The recruitment back into the population of young animals is about 21%. You model that in any population model, as we have with other scientists, and it shows extinction of the population within a very few decades. So it's very clear that if the levels of human mortality continue in Algonquin Park as they have in the past, this population is going to go down the tube. And as it goes down the tube, it's not just this population, it's a distinct species of mammal. I mean, we who provide expertise to all the other countries in the world on managing wildlife, we think we're so enlightened and so on. Are we going to stand back and let a major mammal species go extinct? Now, unless something's done in Algonquin Park, our prediction from our research is that's what's going to happen.
Jhon and Mary Theberge are leaving Algonquin Park for the last time. Their research is complete, and although their conclusions have stirred up a controversy, subsequent studies have all supported their bottom line. The wolf of Algonquin is the purest genetic form of red wolf in the world and on the brink of extinction. In North America, there has never been a documented case of wolves hunting and killing a human being. Yet no more controversial animal lives. None is more misunderstood. What do you hear in the howl of the wolf? Is it the haunting song of the wild or your worst nightmare? Either way, today its howl has changed to a whimper, and before it falls completely silent, we should all listen more carefully.